clear away as we go through the morning. Also a few spots of rain perhaps for the far west of Northern Ireland and a bit more cloud over far north of England, but for many central southern parts of England and Wales it is going to be a bright sunny start, and because of the sunshine any fog and mist patches will quickly clear away. Lots of sunshine then for many of us as we go through tomorrow. Even across Scotland and Northern Ireland it is going to be brighter and sunnier than today, and like I said, those showery outbreaks of rain will clear through as well. With the sunshine, it's going to feel pretty hot, particularly in the southeast, temperatures getting to highs of around 32 Celsius, which will make it the hottest day of the year so far, a little bit fresher towards the northwest. Looking ahead to Wednesday, and it's another fine day for many of us. We still have some very hot, humid air across us, especially in the southeast, and that does mean there is the risk of some thunderstorms pushing up from the south as we go through Wednesday night and into Thursday. So do watch out for some intense thunderstorms on Thursday, particularly in the south, and then some wetter, fresher weather on Friday.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. This is Patrick Christys. Tonight's with me, Ben Leo.
2 children have died as a result of the injuries sustained in this morning's knife attack. 9 other children have been injured, and 6 of them are in a critical condition.
A community and country in shock as a 17-year-old is arrested in connection with a sickening knife attack on young children in Southport. We'll have the latest from our reporter in Merseyside next. Also tonight, police rally around the armed officer who kicked an aggressive suspect at Manchester Airport as shocking new footage emerges. So why were our politicians so quick to throw our brave cops under the bus? Plus,
a projected overspend of £22 billion.
Will your pension and savings get sucked into Labour's budget black hole? Kelvin Mackenzie gives his no-nonsense take. And is it time to make this mob a prescribed terror group? I'll go head-to-head with a Just Stop Oil spokesman later this hour. On my panel tonight is Express columnist Carol Malone, former Labour MP Bill Rammell and ex-Tory party chairman Sir Jake Berry. Oh, and did a veteran commentator deserve to lose his job over this?
Well, the women just finishing off. You know what women are like, hanging around, you know, doing the makeup.
We'll debate that and more in an action-packed 2 hours. Strap yourselves in, let's do this. Can Britain be saved? Next.
At 1 minute after 9, I'm Polly Middlehurst with the latest from the GB newsroom, and police are saying a 17-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder after 2 children died during a ferocious knife attack in Southport on Merseyside today. 9 other children were injured. 6 of those are in a critical condition. They all sustained stab wounds. 2 adults were also injured as they bravely, the police said, tried to protect the children from the attacker. Police say officers were shocked when they attended the emergency call at just after 11:30 this morning and saw that multiple children had been stabbed during a summer holiday dance class. Nearby Alderhay Children's Hospital declared a major incident and asked people to avoid A&E unless necessary. Merseyside police are now saying the 17-year-old boy that's been arrested is from Banks, that's a town just north of Southport, but he's originally from Cardiff. They're also saying the incident is not being treated as terror-related. Well, within the last hour, the King has sent his most heartfelt condolences, prayers and deepest sympathies to the families and loved ones of the victims of what he described as the utterly horrific stabbings. And the Prime Minister said today the whole country is deeply shocked.
And I know I speak for everybody in the whole country in saying our thoughts and condolences with the victims, their families, their friends and the wider community. And it's almost impossible to imagine the grief that they're going through and the trauma that they're going through.
Merseyside Police Chief Constable Serena Kenny spoke this afternoon at a police news conference about the bravery of some of the adults involved in the horrific incident.
2 adults are also in a critical condition after being injured during the incident. A 17-year-old male from Banks in Lancashire, who is originally from Cardiff, has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder, and is being taken to a police station where he will be interviewed by detectives. We believe that the adults who were injured were bravely trying to protect the children who were being attacked.
Just one other story for you. The former BBC presenter Hugh Edwards has been charged with 3 counts of making indecent images of children. That was confirmed by the Metropolitan Police today. The offences are alleged to have taken place between 2020 and 2022, and they relate to images shared on a WhatsApp chat. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm back in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good evening to you. Hope you're well. Now, today I woke up in a pretty good mood this morning and was very excited for today's show. The sun's been out, we had some decent news stories to cover, and there's plenty of debate to get stuck into as well. That will still happen, but I can't deny the news of the horrific stabbing spree of children in Southport left me rather shaken today. Multiple innocent children injured and 2 now confirmed dead as they attended a Taylor Swift-themed yoga session for kids. Their innocence shattered by the kind of evil that most of us will never comprehend. So, to begin with, my thoughts tonight are with all those children and their families. But I've also been wondering for a while now what kind of path this country is heading down. The signs have been there for a while. It's clearly a dark one, but today's targeting of young, helpless children has made me realise that I am finally sick of it. I'm sick of hearing about knife attacks on our armed forces. I'm sick of hearing about terrorism. I'm sick of looking over my shoulder. I'm sick of moral degenerates making excuses for this kind of behaviour. And I'm sick of watching the country I once knew descending fast into the gutter, while only a small handful of people seem to care about it. Unfortunately, the only people who aren't sick of it are our politicians, and sadly, they're the ones who matter. So, if you weren't already, I hope you hold your children and your grandchildren a lot closer tonight, because today, I finally realised that the only person who's going to protect our kids from the insanity unleashed upon us and this country isn't the authorities or the state or even the law. It's me, you and us. For now, we're on our own. We're going to go live now to GB News reporter Will Hollis, who's on the ground in Southport. Will, what's the latest, please?
Yes, well, here on Hart Street, not very far from the beachfront here in Southport, a very well-liked seaside town here in Merseyside. Local people have started to come down and started to lay flowers. They aren't actually allowed past the barrier and the cordon, which blocks off journalists and the public here on the street, but police officers are starting to take those flowers and lay them just at the start of the street. This feels like a very ordinary part of Britain. People have been walking their dogs, young teenagers have been riding their bicycles. But what happened here was completely out of the ordinary, Ben. What started out as a summer holiday dance class, listening to the music of pop star Taylor Swift, young primary school age children between the ages of 4 and 11 was simply starting off the holidays with something to do. Parents had dropped them off. Some of the parents were still inside, and quite abnormally, randomly, you might be able to say, a man came in armed with a knife and started stabbing people. Now, we know this because just a couple of hours ago we heard from Merseyside Police Chief Serena Kennedy, who announced that with great sadness, 2 of those children who had been attacked were dead and 9 others were injured, 6 of whom are in a critical condition. Now, she went on to say that all of those injured have suffered stab wounds which were sustained during the attack. The way that the chief officer described them was that they were a ferocious attack and the children suffered serious injuries. Those were the wounds for the children. 2 adults also in a critical condition after being injured during the attack. We heard how adults bravely protected their children when they realised what was happening. Merseyside police have said that a 17-year-old man from a local village, the Banks area of this part of the country, has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder, and that man will now be questioned and interviewed by detectives from Merseyside Police, and they will be trying to understand what the motive was, but they can say that they feel quite clearly that this is not terror related. They think that at this stage they can say it's not terror related. Police have also said that they don't think there's anybody else that they need to be looking for. A lot of the attention right now is simply on supporting the families and their children, and Officer Kennedy says that family liaison officers, specialists are working with those children, with the families overnight at what is clearly a traumatic time for them, as well as the local community here in Southport.
OK, Will Hollis down on the scene in Southport. Thanks very much. Well, look, let's be honest. If there were ever a time to back our police officers in light of what's happening to this country, I guess it's now. Last week, these 2 chumps sat on a sofa in Manchester with puppy dog eyes, complaining about their treatment at the hands of airport firearms cops who responded to reports of a colleague having her nose broken. We saw a select piece of mobile phone footage showing one officer taking charge of an extremely chaotic situation by striking a kick to the head of one of the men. Greater Manchester Police explains multiple officers had been injured in an assault and there were fears their guns could be taken in the chaos. The firearms officer was swiftly suspended and then, as we all know now, it was announced he's under criminal investigation. So by that point, the two men involved had already hired a solicitor who clearly had pound signs in his eyes when he recorded a series of videos for social media. He suddenly quit over the weekend, and you'll understand why in just a few moments.
After consulting with the family, I have decided for now to step aside, and I have recommended the family to a lawyer. But I will be keeping a close eye on this. And I like to say that I am not for violence, whether it's from police officers, whether it's from civilians.
I wonder why he stepped down. As I said, you're about to find out, because he wasn't alone in having a dig at the police. Journalists, commentators, members of the public all condemned what they saw in that selective original video, without a care in the world, by the way, for the poor young female police officer who had her nose smashed to pieces. They didn't even bother to consider there may have been context to that moment, or understand that an out-of-control mob assaulting armed police in an airport could have turned very nasty very quickly. In fact, there was more outrage, wasn't there, at the yob being kicked by a copper than there was at a brave British Army soldier being knifed multiple times outside his barracks. It's insane. Even Rochdale's Labour MP, Paul Ward, was quick to run to the defence of the violent mob, saying they are, quote, deeply traumatised by what happened. And he virtual signalled to the Commons about how the footage he saw was shocking and disturbing.
The video footage of a Greater Manchester police officer stamping on and kicking a man in Manchester Airport is truly shocking and disturbing. That man is one of my constituents in Rochdale, and I'm meeting his family later today. Our police face a very difficult job every day in keeping us all safe, but they themselves know that they have to expect the highest standards of conduct in their duties.
But now we have the full story, don't we? This piece of previously unreleased CCTV footage obtained by Manchester Evening News now shows the men involved swinging their fists wildly at the police in what can only be described as a very serious and very worrying assault. This was the context some of us, very few of us, were always calling for. And these are the people you've been so shamelessly pandering to. The lad involved, let's be honest, should be thankful he got away with just a kicking. And as for the policeman involved, the investigation into him now needs to be immediately dropped. But let's get the thoughts now of tonight's panel. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, former Labour Minister Bill Rammell, and former chairman of the Conservative Party, Sir Jake Berry. Good evening to you three. Let me get my running shoes on. Good thing I've had 10 cups of tea today. So let's get straight to the point here. Should this copper, who was suspended initially, now he's being investigated criminally, do the charges need to completely go in light of this new footage?
But I think what has to happen is the investigation has to be seen to take its course, because we can't have any cock-ups here with the investigation. It has to be done. And that's what should have happened in the first place before everyone else jumped to judgment. It was interesting, I was listening to Andy Burnham when this happened last week, and he kept on calling for calm and saying there were two sides to every story, because he'd obviously seen the police footage, so he knew what was coming. He knew that the coppers were provoked. But, you know, those two lads inflicted disgusting violence on three coppers who had to be hospitalised. The young lady, as you said, had her nose broken. And you know, that lawyer, that TikTok lawyer, Ahmed Yaqub, he said at the time, you know, talk about a race grifter, he said at the time that this was an assassination attempt. He made it out to be a race issue. We were reading quotes of Islamophobic brutality. It was nothing to do with that. It was two lads jumping on three coppers, and, you know, at least two of them were armed. You have to do what needs to be done to put down someone who could get hold of your gun.
I've said before, if this was in the US, in an airport with armed officers, they would have been shot straight away. Of course, it's a different scenario here because we don't have guns in society, but
we couldn't have the cops could not have let those lads get hold of those guns. And you saw how out of control they were. They could quite likely have gone.
Bill, what was your first thoughts when you saw the kicking video without the whole context? Were you kind of on board with the bandwagon of, you know...
No, I wasn't on board with the bandwagon, but I was concerned about it. But I think it's interesting. Andy Burnham has been pressing for that whole video footage to be released because he knew what the background was. So I'm really pleased that's now been released. It gives the background and context. However, I wouldn't say you stop the investigation because you can't give carte blanche to any police officer that it's acceptable to use disproportionate force and kick someone in the head.
Well,
but there is another element to this. That so-called solicitor is a political activist. He's an extreme Islamist who stood at the general election as an independent against Labour MPs.
He's resigned now, of course. He knew that footage was coming out, the CCTV, and he's done a runner. I mean...
So he's a coward as well as a race grifter.
Jake, I mean...
So take the slightly different view. I actually think it's right that the police officer is investigated. I know we agree on that, and I take this in my background as a lawyer. If you go into a courtroom and you're involved in an assault, a kick to the head or a stamp on the head is an aggravating factor, both when it comes to sentences and the severity of the crime that you were charged in the first place. It's taken extremely seriously.
But does the context not matter?
Let me finish. It's taken extremely seriously because of the likelihood of a potential fatality related to it. These were firearms officers. They are paid very bravely to run towards danger, and their training is not to lose control in any situation. And the fact that he kicked this individual in the head, sorry to say, he may have been provoked, shows that to some extent he lost control, he lost sight of his training. And that's why it's right that the investigation takes place. I don't think for one second this individual should lose his job, but it may be that he gets some of his training refreshed as a firearms officer. Well, because that sort of reaction, that almost panic reaction of firearms officer is very, very dangerous.
But don't you think, we have had a go at coppers for the last year and a half, watched some of these demonstrations, not doing anything. But they have to have the power to protect themselves if someone is coming at them. Now, obviously that was not a situation.
With proportionate force. And
you know,
under the law, on the face of it looks like disproportionate force.
But they're still human beings, and they had still watched their colleagues just having the you-know-what beaten out of them.
That young officer had her nose smashed to pieces,
Yes.
3 others hospitalised. The GMP, Greater Manchester Police, said there was a concern that their guns would be taken.
Yes.
When that officer had that guy on the ground and he gave him a kicking, he didn't know what was going on around him. In his defence, he's trying to neutralise anyone...
Well, that's the point of the investigation, though, isn't it? That's why you've got to have this investigation, because it may have been reasonable force. On the face of it, in both videos, I'm not sure it was. But that's the point of having the investigation, because if that is true, this officer should immediately return to duties with an absolutely unblemished record.
Do you know what? I think we're so used to seeing police officers, doing the YMCA at Pride and covering their cars in rainbow flags, and for once, finally, we see them displaying some authority and, some power. And we're all so surprised about it.
Jake's right. Police officers are trained to act appropriately in these circumstances. And on the face of it, it looks like this officer didn't. And the problem is, if you just say that's OK, go ahead, you are setting a very dangerous precedent for the way we police people.
And they are the ones walking around with guns. That's it. They've got to keep their cool. That is part of their training. They are the ones walking around with guns.
They're under enormous pressure because everyone's got a phone, everyone's got a camera, everyone's a photojournalist now. And you can imagine, you say they're trained. It's difficult when you're in the situation when you're trying to do it properly and you mess up because your
do you know what?
tensions are heightened.
I've got friends in counter-terror units across the UK, and they've all said that group is lucky they weren't shot by our officers. Turning up, swinging left and right and centre, breaking a young girl's nose. They would have had... I reckon they would have been safe when it came to the law if they'd engaged their firearms. And that says something. That's why I said in the monologue, you got away with the kicking. And the fact that those 2 lads and the lawyer, I know he's quit now, but sat on the sofa playing the victims like they're in some sort of local newspaper.
They certainly are not victims.
Exactly. And the problem is political activists come into this. George Galloway was there, the hard left were there, extreme Islamists, and they're all trying to fuel hatred and tension.
OK, Carol, Bill, Jake, thanks very much. We'll come back to you very shortly. Coming up in the show, Labour cave and hand junior doctors a bumper pay rise.
This can finally bring an end to strike action, which has cost patients £1.5 million cancelled appointments and our NHS £1.7 billion.
But surprise, surprise, they're still not happy, are they? I'll take on a junior doctor on that issue very, very shortly. But up next, the eco-zealots at Just Stop Oil try and fail to ruin the holidays of hard-working Brits. But is it time to ban them and prescribe them as a terror group? Just Stop Oil spokesman Adrian Johnson goes head-to-head with political commentator Lee Harris next. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Oh no, just when I thought it was safe, here we go round again. The target this time is one of the most recognisable landmarks in London. Standing at 176 feet tall, the Albert Memorial was commissioned by Queen Victoria in 1862 to honour her late husband, Prince Albert, and was built 10 years later, a year and a century before I was born. Now, situated in Hyde Park, the monument depicts a gold statue of the Prince, alongside 4 groups of large statues which represent the 4 continents of the world: Asia, America, Africa and Europe. Now, the statues representing Asia include a woman on an elephant. America is represented by a Native American with a bison. Africa shows a woman riding a camel, and there's a white European woman reading a book to a black African tribesman. Now, the Royal Park's website claims that these statues draw on racial stereotypes. The Royal Parks, who manage parks in London, deemed it as highly offensive because it reflects a Victorian view of the world. Of course, it reflects a Victorian view of the world. It was built in the Victorian era by request of Queen Victoria. Shock, horror. And it only reflects this view, if you even know what that is. Why would this be offensive? Surely you could at least appreciate the fact and the feat of this artwork, which is quite impressive, even now. Daily Mail journalist Robert Hardman went on a tour of those incredible tunnels, and he said it goes on and on like the catacombs until you realise that you're actually going round and round a series of concentric circles. This is a monument in itself to the technical rigour and pride which went into the Victorian engineering. Exactly.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Coming up, will the government's decision to offer a 22% pay rise, whopping number, to junior doctors come back to bite them? I'll thrash it out with one of those junior doctors who still isn't satisfied very shortly. But first, as they continue to cause chaos across Britain, should the Just Stop Oil protest group finally be banned? It's time for tonight's head-to-head. Yes, and of course they were. Just Stop Oil were back in the headlines today after they attempted to bring Gatwick Airport to a standstill by blocking the departures lounge. So here we are, here's the pictures. Despite locking themselves to suitcases, the 7 activists failed to disrupt much at all after passengers simply stepped over them. That was before police moved in to arrest them. It follows, of course, repeated threats from Just Stop Oil to disrupt British airports over the peak summer season, with 10 of their members preemptively arrested last week over a plot to target Heathrow. But even the risk of prison time doesn't seem to put these people off, with the 4-year sentences handed down to protesters that caused disruption on the M25 clearly not influencing their behaviour. So tonight I'm asking, should Just Stop Oil be banned? Let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/yoursay or tweet me at GBNews and vote in the poll whilst you're there. I'll bring you the results very, very shortly. But first, going head-to-head on this are Just Stop Oil spokesperson Adrian Johnson and political commentator Lee Harris. Adrian, I'll start with you. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Why are you targeting holidaymakers and airports? Do you want everyone to simply stop flying?
Good evening, Ben. Thank you so much for having me on. Ben, to be very clear about this isn't about flying. This isn't about stopping people flying. This is, we're taking action because we're calling on governments globally to end the extraction and burning of fossil fuels by 2030. And it's an international uprising that's taking place in 12 different countries, organised by 21 different groups, and we are part of that international.
So why airports over this summer season? You tried Heathrow, you were foiled. Why Gatwick today?
Well, airports are key sites of the fossil fuel economy.
OK. When was the last holiday abroad you had, Adrian?
That's a really good question. I'd have to think about that.
Was it quite...
It wasn't flying. It wasn't flying then. It was by coach, but it was some time ago.
OK, well, look, if I may say so, you got the memo, but one of your protesters today, Melissa Carrington, she's 63 from Dorset, she was named in your press release and she was pictured at the security entrance today at Gatwick. This is her posing in Dubai, pulling some fancy yoga poses. These are publicly available pictures on her Facebook page. I'll take 2 minutes to go on there and have a look. So why is it OK for your protesters to holiday abroad on gas-guzzling jets, but not other people?
Again, to repeat, Ben, this isn't about flying. This isn't a moral statement about flying. This is about ending the use and the burning of fossil fuels.
So you don't see the hypocrisy in one of your members flying to Dubai for a holiday and yet protesting at Gatwick Airport, stopping people's summer holidays, no?
I tell you what I see, Ben. I see the absolute necessity of people, ordinary people like Mel, taking action like this, because we are up against entrenched power that are not going to give in to debate and not going to give in to scientific argument. And yet we know from the science, it is absolutely clear that we are heading for societal collapse and that we're doing this actually in support of law and order. Because when people starve and they get hungry, law and order collapses, and we do not want to see that.
Yeah, sure. OK, let me bring in Lee. I mean, some would say, Lee, that, you know, if your house is burning down, you wouldn't go and take another flight abroad.
Yeah, but the problem with all of this is it's completely futile. We are still going to need oil and gas. I think we will still be using 50% of our energy will be coming from oil and gas by 2030. And this comes from the Climate Committee, the government's own Climate Committee. I think even by 2050, we'll still be using 25%. And that's when we hit net zero. We'll still be using 25% oil and gas for our energy needs. That is just going to be a fact. That's going to happen. So I really don't understand what your aims are, because you're not going to change that fact. And by the way, those estimates are based on assuming that the renewable technology proceeds and continues in the way that it is. And there's a lot of people actually that believe that that might not actually happen. So these are quite generous estimates. We are still going to need oil and gas. So I don't understand what you think you're going to stop. It's genuinely futile.
Adrian?
Thanks. OK, so Lee, we have to absolutely do this. OK, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging. But I would say, again, it is absolutely necessary. But it's also effective. Okay, the action that we're taking is actually effective. So, for example, views of the video of this morning's action have been seen by millions of people. The action in 2022 that you referred to, Ben, that led to the imprisonment of the 5 people for 21 years as a total, that action actually shifted the views of over 2 million people in the UK, and it actually changed.
How did you work that one out?
Because research was done, over 1,000 people were surveyed before the action, they were surveyed after the action, and based on those results of those surveys, it maps onto 2 million people changing the views. But the thing that's incontrovertible there, or you cannot argue, the government changed their policy. They have cancelled.
I mean, Adrian, that survey sounds as flimsy as the climate argument, to be fair.
But the other thing is this, Ben, to repeat, we're calling on governments to agree, to work together and to sign an international legally binding treaty to end the use of fossil fuels by 2030. Now, that treaty, okay, the mention of that treaty in the media since the start of our airport actions globally has gone up by over 8,000%. Okay, this is effective.
Adrian,
and it is necessary.
Adrian, I hate to interrupt. Are you aware that we are one of the first G20 countries, or the first G20 country, to halve our emissions? You're kind of, preaching to the converted. The UK has done probably one of the most in terms of all the Western countries over the last 50 years to reduce our carbon emissions. We're responsible for less than 1% of global emissions, and actually we've had to deindustrialise to get that. So now we're effectively increasing the overall emissions.
And Adrian, if I may interrupt, Adrian as well, you've got what you wanted. You've got a Labour government, Ed Miliband running riot, that's scrapping any new licences in the North Sea, wind farms everywhere. You've got what you wanted. So why are you still trying to block people enjoying the summer holidays, especially when your own protesters do the same thing? They're off to Dubai and wherever else.
Because, I'm hugely proud of what the UK has achieved so far, but it clearly is not enough. You need to go further, and we need to go faster. We need to have a sense of urgency. We need to actually mirror the urgency of the scientists, the experts who know what they're talking about.
Trust the experts. OK. Adrian, by the way, who funds Just Stop Oil?
It's mainly funded by small donations.
Well, you do get donations. It's mainly funded by the Climate Emergency Fund. I'm sure you're familiar with them, yes?
CEF, I am familiar with that. I've seen a pie chart.
So one of your biggest donors, Adam McKay, who's the Hollywood film director, he boasts all the time, you can find these clips online, he boasts all the time about flying from LA to his holiday home in Ireland. So again, I say, and I will say it, it's hypocrisy for your members who are sitting at Gatwick to take holidays but stop other people from taking holidays, and it's hypocrisy for your biggest funder, Adam McKay, to fly when he wants to escape the hustle and bustle of LA to Ireland whenever he likes. It's pure hypocrisy.
But Ben, it is not hypocritical to sit down, to put ourselves in the way, to try and make change that is absolutely necessary.
Okay. But you're not going to make that change, Adrian.
Lee, we're sorry to interrupt, we're running out of time. 10 seconds, last word to you.
You're not going to make that change, Adrian, if you target the hard-working British public. You need to get people on side, and you're not going to do... Well, you've alienated hundreds and thousands of people because of what you're doing. It's honestly hypocritical middle-class clowns.
OK. All right, Adrian, look, we disagree, but I appreciate you coming on. Thank you. And you too, Lee, thanks for coming tonight. So who do you agree with back home? Sam on X says impossible to ban, unfortunately. Joanne on X says no. However, arrest them when they break the law or don't comply with instructions to move, and I guess the police are doing that more recently. And Sean on X says groups like Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion and Insulate Britain are too extreme and a death cult. The latest stunt shows they want to frighten us with their cultish statements. Ban them all together. And your verdict is now in. 96% of you agree Just Stop Oil should be banned, while 4% of you say they should stick around for a bit longer. All right, good stuff. Now, Melissa Carrington, one of the Just Stop Oil protesters at Gatwick, today said innocent people around the world already face extreme weather and deadly heat, and no one's prepared for the societal collapse that unchecked global heating will bring, just as a bit of a right of reply for her. Now, coming up, Reeves readies the road for tax rises.
Have inherited a projected overspend of £22 billion.
So are your pensions and savings about to be sucked into Labour's big budget black hole? Kelvin McKenzie gives his unmissable take soon. But first, Wes Streeting caves in and hands junior doctors a ridiculously generous pay rise.
This can finally bring an end to strike action, which has cost patients £1.5 million cancelled appointments and our NHS £1.7 billion.
So the question begs, why are the BMA still not satisfied? I'll speak to a junior doctor who wants more and more and more, and that's next. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Good evening. Coming to you from the Met Office, here is your latest GB News weather forecast. Whilst tomorrow is looking largely sunny and hotter than today for many of us, we do have a bit of cloud and some rain still across parts of the northwest due to a weak decaying front that is gradually making its way southeastwards. That rain then is going to push its way a little bit further across parts of Scotland and perhaps Northern Ireland before easing and clearing away overnight, and so for many it is going to turn largely dry. There will be some clear skies around, but also a few pockets of mist and fog here and there. In the southeast, I'm expecting it to be a bit warmer than last night, but towards the northwest, it should be a touch fresher, perhaps a little bit more comfortable. If we take a closer look at what we can expect first thing tomorrow morning, then down the eastern side of Scotland, a bright sunny start here. Further west, though, a bit cloudier, and there could still be some lingering showery outbreaks of rain around, though these will largely clear away as we go through the morning. Also, a few spots of rain perhaps for the far west of Northern Ireland, and a bit more cloud over far north of England. But for many central southern parts of England and Wales, it is going to be a bright sunny start. And because of the sunshine, any fog and mist patches will quickly clear away. Lots of sunshine then for many of us as we go through tomorrow. Even across Scotland and Northern Ireland, it is going to be brighter and sunnier than today. And like I said, those showery outbreaks of rain will clear through as well. With the sunshine, it's going to feel pretty hot, particularly in the southeast, temperatures getting to highs of around 32 Celsius, which will make it the hottest day of the year so far. A little bit fresher towards the northwest. Looking ahead to Wednesday, and it's another fine day for many of us. We still have some very hot, humid air across us, especially in the southeast, and that does mean there is the risk of some thunderstorms pushing up from the south as we go through Wednesday night and into Thursday. So do watch out for some intense thunderstorms on Thursday, particularly in the south, and then some wetter, fresher weather on Friday.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Coming up, has the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, paved the way for tax rises? But first, junior doctors have today been offered an astonishing 22% pay rise as the government looks to end the strike action that's crippled the NHS. The British Medical Association has agreed to put an offer to its members that could see junior doctors get a 4% backdated pay rise alongside the existing 9% salary increase for the current financial year. And to top it all off, cherry on the cake, they're also being offered a 6% pay rise for the next year, plus an extra £1,000 payment in their bank. But given that junior doctors have been demanding a 35% rise, there's no guarantee that BMA members will accept the offer. Well, it comes on the same day that the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, confirmed that teachers and nurses will get a 5.5% pay rise. I'm joined now by junior doctor and GP trainee Pasha Mukherjee. Good evening, Pasha. Thank you for joining me. So 22%, a massive, whopping pay rise by anyone else's standards, but you want more.
So I think everyone's obsessed with the numbers. We've been talking about 35%, but it's not really just about the number after all. We are losing thousands of doctors every year because of the working conditions as well. And of course, a pay rise or a pay restoration would be a good way to keep some of those doctors from leaving. But more importantly, I think West Streeting has sent a message to the junior doctors that they are being listened to and they are valued. He's taken action promptly straight after being elected, which is something that the Tory government took forever to come to table. They didn't give any offer since last November. So I think it says, it's setting a precedent for something really positive going forward.
But you do want more than the 22% that's been offered?
Me personally, I think 22% is much better than what we've been offered all this time. And I think most of us actually are getting burnt out from even striking. This has become a long, drawn-out process. I personally lost faith that we would get anywhere with this. So this is really positive for me.
Well,
I'd be happy with it personally.
I mean, you didn't have to strike because some people, I mean, you're criticised fiercely by people who say you strike over the busiest periods of the year, over Christmas. Last year, there was 53,000 excess deaths in the UK, undiagnosed cancers, undiagnosed heart attacks, strokes, people dying well before their time. Do you feel responsible for any of those deaths?
I can't say that we bear responsibility for the patients that we're not looking after when we're not there. But what I can say is that...
You should be there, though, that's the point.
What I can say is that we have to look at the future of the NHS overall. We have to look at the number of deaths that are happening during the Christmas period. 500 excess deaths every single week. These were non-strike days. And this is because of the shortage of staff, because of the condition of the NHS, and that's what we're trying to prevent from getting worse and worse and worse over time.
Do you not think that what you're doing now with this 22%, you want more, you want 30%, do you not think the floodgates are just going to open? It's going to be nurses next, it's going to be radiologists, and the NHS is going to forever be in turmoil of striking staff and personnel. What happened to your priority of caring for patients?
So here's the thing. These strike motions have come into action after 14 years of regression of pay. And I absolutely think that if nurses are not happy with the pay, and I must tell you that they indeed were not, a large portion of nurses were not happy with the pay that was offered to them. The government abandoned the nurses last year. So I absolutely think that the condition that our healthcare staff are currently having to live under is absolutely deplorable, and I do think that public sector workers do deserve more money. And I do think that the NHS, the way it's been managed, where the money has actually gone to, could have been better spent. 3 times the amount that it would have been for just restoring the pay of junior doctors. That's how much the government has already spent on filling the shifts. That could have gone to nurses. That could have gone to other staff.
If you asked any other public sector worker or even private sector worker, are you happy with the 22% pay rise? They would absolutely bite your hand off and think they were dreaming. Can I ask why you got into public health? Why you joined the NHS? Why you trained GPs? And why you're a junior doctor? What was it? Was it the money? Or did you get into it for caring for people?
Absolutely not. I absolutely wanted to get into it to serve people. And at the moment, I don't feel that I'm doing that very well either, because the resources are so starved. The quality of care that we're able to deliver as individuals is subpar.
Can I read you some comments?
We're not fixing health at all. We are just pushing the barrier a little bit further.
Well,
That's what we're doing.
With respect, you're definitely not fixing health when you're not turning up to work and treating patients, and a number of Brits, thousands of Brits, are dying before their time. Can I read you some comments today from GBNews viewers about this offer? One said, once doctors were respected and admired by the public, not so now we've woken up to them. Another said, doctors care little for their patients or quality of care they give. It's all about how much money they can blackmail the taxpayer for. And someone else said excessive salaries, obscene pension payments and no accountability by doctors.
And I want to ask them, do they actually know the facts about exactly how much pay rise it means per doctor? It's barely £5 extra. For the lowermost junior doctors that are not even doing...
£5 an hour?
Well, where they're getting paid £15 and the pay rise would equate to £20 an hour. And you have to think about this is 50% of the NHS workforce we're talking about. So that 35% pay rise...
That's a 25% increase.
So when you take a really small number and increase it by 35%, it still equates to a very small number. So we've got to think about the fact that doctors at the moment in this country are not paid well enough in the first place.
So would you now support pay strikes, walkouts from the likes of paramedics, as I said, radiologists, consultants, dentists, GPs? Would you support them walking out? Would you encourage them to walk out and do what you guys have done?
None of us want to strike. And let me tell you this, much before the strikes even came into action, there was discourse, there was supposed to have been a resolution. The strike was the very last resort. And I would suggest that the way West Streeting is going, with the way that he's coming forward to discuss and discourse, we've not had any strikes yet, I want to say that that's a really good sign, and that needs to take precedent over strike motion. Strike motion is never a good idea. Actually, the discussion and resolution should be reached beforehand. The negotiation has been happening for much longer than these last 20 months.
OK. I think some just fear, Pasha, that the floodgates are now opened, you know, the cat's out the bag. As I said, everyone is going to be now walking out, threatening strikes for more money. And, yeah, I wish you well.
Thank you.
And it's funny also, just to add, it's funny how the BMA and Labour have managed to sort this out in 3 weeks when, you know, the Tories were trying for a long time Some are saying that politically maybe it's a move to discredit the Tories. But Pasha Mukherjee, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right, coming up, as Suella exits the Tory leadership race with an extraordinary dig at her party. Should she join forces with Nigel Farage's Reform Revolution? I give my take at 10. Plus, did a veteran commentator deserve to lose his job over this?
Well, the women just finishing off. You know what women are like, hanging around, you know, doing the makeup.
Oh dear, a little bit silly, admittedly. But next, Rachel Reeves magically discovers a £20 billion black hole. So will your pension and taxes be sucked into it? Fleet Street legend Kelvin MacKenzie gives his unfiltered analysis live in the studio next. This is Patrick Christys Tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new two-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life, and he's there to do it. I mean, we mustn't forget that in, I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like. And he also helps people who are selling the magazine.
Big Issue, no?
Yes, The Big Issue. And he's worked all day long with the same man twice now. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where
be...
does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's, you know. And there will be a lot more, and he's been getting the money to do this. And I think he wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Christys Tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Still to come, should Suella Braverman join Reform UK? I'll give my take at 10, but first, we welcome Fleet Street legend Kelvin MacKenzie. And Rachel Reeves paved the way for potential tax rises in a landmark speech today after the Daily Telegraph revealed the Treasury plans to raise capital gains tax and cut pension tax relief for middle-class workers.
On my arrival at the Treasury 3 weeks ago, it became clear that there were things that I did not know. Things that the party opposite covered up. Covered up from the opposition, covered up from this House, covered up from the country. The government published its plans for day-to-day spending in the spring budget in March. But when I arrived at the Treasury, on the very first day, I was alerted by officials that this was not how much the previous government expected to spend this year. The total pressures on these budgets across a range of areas was an additional £35 billion.
Oh no, what a mess, what a surprise. Who would have thought? Maybe the OBR? The Chancellor is keen to blame a £20 billion funding gap she inherited from the Conservative government for any future tax rises. But sorry, Rachel, that's not going to wash. In an interview with the Financial Times on June the 16th, Rachel Reeves said, "We've got the OBR now. We know things are in a pretty bad state. You don't need an election to find that out." Kelvin, is Rachel Reeves preparing to betray voters by raising taxes?
Yes, she certainly will. And she is dissembling, or another word for it, lying, when she said she didn't know. Every economist, and she was a Bank of England economist, unbelievably, knew that the money wasn't there and that something would have to go. Actually, I was pleased today to see that fuel payment being scrapped, because the next question is, now you've scrapped that, right, on the basis that people weren't entitled to it, they had enough money, why don't we look at all forms of benefit, like council house tenancy and that kind of stuff, and travelling around London when you're over 60 for no money at all? Why have we got
Kelvin,
all these benefits?
The problem is they're taking it from pensioners and giving it to junior doctors.
Yes, they are. And actually, that's a disgrace as well. That was a great interview, that, by the way, because what it made clear to me is they're going to say no to that 22%. And they're going to fight it out. And do you know what? They are disgusting people. They will literally let your mother die for another 3%. These are the kind of people we now have in there. So the sooner we break down the NHS and turn it into private and public, so public if you can't afford it, private if you can, let's get on with it. I hate the idea of people allowing that we have a group of workers in our country, highly trained, highly intelligent, who are prepared to let you die and other people die for cancer. It is an incredible moment, this. And actually, only Labour would indulge them. Actually, the thing I admired about the Tories is they take them on. If you're a train driver now, what's going to be the next amount of money that you demand for your pay rise? Is it going to be 22? Is it going to be 35? Anybody who has leverage in the system, and obviously public sector pay workers at the top of that pile, are going to screw you into the ground. It is going to be a shocking moment. Anyway, at least we know from day one that the Labour Party are prepared to take your money and give it to anybody who can blackmail them.
So capital gains tax is likely to be going up in the October budget.
That's a disgrace. Capital gains tax is based on the basis that you're taking a risk. It's not like being employed. You've taken your money, you've bet it, and unbelievably, and I know about this, by the way, I've made a load of money, I've lost a load of money, okay? You should be actually rewarded for taking risk. This party talks about growth. The only way you're going to get growth is not through paying doctors 35%. You're going to get growth by investing in entrepreneurs.
Yeah, as you said, Kelvin, when you invest in assets, in property, in commodities, in stocks and shares, you're taking a gamble. You're taking a sophisticated punt. And then for the state, the government to then come and take their cut. It's like the equivalent of going into Ladbrokes and seeing some bloke who's just won money on a horse and saying, thanks very much, I'll have some of that. You didn't earn it at all. You didn't earn it.
I totally agree with that. But how can the party say we're a party of growth, where at the same time, if you do grow anything and you take a risk, we're going to take 40% of that rather than the 25 or 20%.
Kelvin, we're fast running out of time. Who is your pick for the next Tory leader?
Jenrick, I would think. I admire Kemi, but I think we need a period of calm, and I think we get more chaos with Kemi. So I'm afraid, being taken on the left by Tugendhat, who I'm a very nice guy, but not the guy to lead us into the promised land.
So for the benefit of viewers who haven't been keeping up to date, we've got James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat, Mel Stride, Priti Patel and Kemi Badenoch. You're not a fan of Priti? Because she's leading with members in recent polls.
Personally, but she's not going to win it. She's not going to win it. It's going to be between Jenrick and Tugendhat or Tugendhat and Kemi. And I think Kemi actually is not for me. I just think that she'll do too much shouting and not enough doing.
Announcing her vision for the future, Badenoch has promised a 5-year plan focused on the renewal of capitalism and free enterprise, while warning, quote, "It is not enough to call for unity to win. We need to ask ourselves, what are we uniting around? What are we winning for?"
Yes, I agree with you. The Conservative Party have a massive problem, and that the problem is Nigel Farage. Because at any time they have a good thought, Nigel will have already done it.
Kelvin Mackenzie, thank you very much for your expertise. Appreciate it, as always. Have a good evening.
Cheers, matey.
Right, another cracking hour coming up, including, have you seen this, a hate cleric with his own army has raised £3 million in a bid to create an Islamic homeland on this remote Scottish island.
Here, my brothers, God willing, we want to build the largest mosque, the school, the houser. We want this place to be a homeland to the Shiites and the believers in a wide land.
The furious locals are having none of it. I'll speak to one of them after 10. But next, as Suella exits the Tory leadership race with an extraordinary dig at her party, should she join forces with Nigel Farage's reform revolution? All that, plus tomorrow's newspaper front pages, coming up in just a tick. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now your weather with Alex Deakin.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Coming to you from the Met Office, here is your latest GB News weather forecast. Whilst tomorrow is looking largely sunny and hotter than today for many of us, we do have a bit of cloud and some rain still across parts of the northwest due to a weak decaying front that is gradually making its way southeastwards. That rain then is going to push its way a little bit further across parts of Scotland and perhaps Northern Ireland before easing and clearing away overnight, and so for many it is going to turn largely dry. There will be some clear skies around, but also a few pockets of mist and fog here and there. In the southeast, I'm expecting it to be a bit warmer than last night, but towards the northwest, it should be a touch fresher, perhaps a little bit more comfortable. If we take a closer look at what we can expect first thing tomorrow morning, then down the eastern side of Scotland, a bright sunny start here. Further west, though, a bit cloudier, and there could still be some lingering showery outbreaks of rain around, though these will largely clear away as we go through the morning. Also, a few spots of rain perhaps for the far west of Northern Ireland, and a bit more cloud over far north of England. But for many central southern parts of England and Wales, it is going to be a bright sunny start, and because of the sunshine, any fog and mist patches will quickly clear away. Lots of sunshine then for many of us as we go through tomorrow. Even across Scotland and Northern Ireland, it is going to be brighter and sunnier than today, and like I said, those showery outbreaks of rain will clear through as well. With the sunshine, it's going to feel pretty hot, particularly in the southeast, temperatures getting to highs of around 32 Celsius, which will make it the hottest day of the year so far. A little bit fresher towards the northwest. Looking ahead to Wednesday, and it's another fine day for many of us. We still have some very hot, humid air across us, especially in the southeast, and that does mean there is the risk of some thunderstorms pushing up from the south as we go through Wednesday night and into Thursday. So do watch out for some intense thunderstorms on Thursday, particularly in the south, and then some wetter, fresher weather on Friday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could become the next big Great British Giveaway winner, with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
On the day that I got the money in the bank account, everything just seemed a lot sunnier.
But I do have something to spend it on.
Just go for it. It's an absolute must.
Thank you, GBNews.
Amazing feeling to win.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. This is Patrick Christys Tonight with me, Ben Leo.
2 children have died as a result of the injuries sustained in this morning's knife attack. 9 other children have been injured, and 6 of them are in a critical condition.
A community and country in shock. A 17-year-old is arrested in connection with a sickening knife attack on young children in Southport. We'll have the latest from our reporter in Merseyside next. Also tonight...
Suella Bradman is a good friend of mine. She ticks all my boxes and probably all the boxes of Reform UK.
Suella sends Reform tongues wagging as she drops out of the Tory leadership race with an extraordinary passing shot. But should she join Nigel Farage's party? I'll give my take next. Plus...
Here, my brothers, God willing, we want to build the largest mosque, the school, the hausa. We want this place to be a homeland to the Shiites and the believers in a wide land.
A hate cleric with his own army has raised £3 million in a bid to create an Islamic homeland on a remote Scottish island. But the furious locals are having none of it. I'll speak to one of them later this hour. Plus, on my panel tonight, it's Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, former Labour MP Bill Rammell and ex-Tory party chairman Sir Jake Berry. Oh, and did a veteran commentator deserve to lose his job over this?
Well, the women just finishing off. You know what women are like, hanging around, doing the makeup.
Strap yourselves in. Let's do this. Should Suella join forces with Farage? Next.
The news at just after 10 o'clock from the GB newsroom is that police tonight are saying a 17-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder after 2 children died during a ferocious knife attack in Southport on Merseyside earlier on today. 9 other children have been injured. 6 of those are in a critical condition in hospital. They all sustained stab wounds. 2 adults were also injured as they tried to protect the children from the attacker. Police are saying when their officers arrived, they were shocked. The emergency call came in just after 11:30 this morning, and they saw that multiple children had been ferociously attacked during a summer holiday dance class. Nearby Alderhay Children's Hospital declared a major incident and asked people to stay away from A&E unless they had to come in. Merseyside police are saying the 17-year-old boy that's been arrested is from Banks. That's a town just north of Southport in Lancashire. He's originally from Cardiff. They're also saying the incident is not being treated as terror-related. Well, the Merseyside Police Chief, Serena Kennedy, spoke earlier on this afternoon about the bravery of some of the adults involved in the horrific incident today.
2 adults are also in a critical condition after being injured during the incident. A 17-year-old male from Banks in Lancashire, who is originally from Cardiff, has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder, and is being taken to a police station where he will be interviewed by detectives. We believe that the adults who were injured were bravely trying to protect the children who were being attacked.
Well, His Majesty the King has sent his most heartfelt condolences, prayers and deepest sympathies to the families and loved ones of the victims of the utterly horrific stabbings. And just within the last hour, the Prince and Princess of Wales have also sent their love, thoughts and prayers to the victims of what they've called the heinous attack, adding, "As parents, we cannot begin to imagine what the families, friends and loved ones of those killed and injured today are going through." Well, the Prime Minister says the whole country is deeply shocked.
And I know I speak for everybody in the whole country in saying our thoughts and condolences with the victims, their families, their friends and the wider community. And it's almost impossible to imagine the grief that they're going through and the trauma that they're going through.
Prime Minister speaking earlier. Well, just one last news story for you. The former BBC presenter Hugh Edwards has been charged with 3 counts of making indecent images of children. That was confirmed by the Metropolitan Police. He's accused of having 6 Category A images, 12 Category B images and 19 Category C images of children. The offences are alleged to have taken place between 2020 and 2022 and relate to images he shared on a WhatsApp chat. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm back in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly, and good evening to you back home. We're going to go live now to Southport, where our reporter Will Hollis has the latest on today's events.
Yes, well, a few moments ago, the sun set here on quite a dark day in Southport. Hart Street, where at the start of the day, a children's dance class where young primary school age children at the start of their summer holidays were listening to Taylor Swift, was abruptly ended when a man came in armed with a knife and began stabbing children as well as some of the adults there. Earlier today, Merseyside police confirmed that of the children attacked, 2 of them have been pronounced dead. 9 children in total, in addition to those numbers injured, 6 of whom are in a critical condition. Now, this was a press conference led by the Chief Officer, Serena Kennedy, who, in announcing those deaths, said that all of those who have been injured suffered stab wounds. And the way that she described it was that it was a ferocious attack where all of those children received serious injuries. 3 hospitals were used when people were taken away by the North West Ambulance Service. One of those, Alder Hay, declared a major incident. That's specifically a children's hospital. They were warning parents of other sick children not to bring them to the hospital unless there was an emergency. That's the severity of what happened here in this part of Merseyside. But what we've heard as well tonight from Merseyside police is that a 17-year-old male from the nearby village of Banks has been arrested. He is originally from Cardiff. Police at this point, detectives have been interviewing him, trying to establish what his motive might be. That remains unclear, but what police say they think is pretty clear is that this is not terror related. They say that they do not think this has anything to do with terrorism. They also say that they're not looking for anybody else and that there is no wider threat to the public. We've been hearing, as well as from the Prime Minister and Home Secretary, from the King, who said that he and his wife, the Queen, are profoundly shocked and that his heartfelt condolences are with the families affected. Ben, you can probably hear in the background there are a lot of journalists here. There are a lot of not just local media, national media, as well as some international media here as well. And lots of people from the local community have been coming down to lay flowers in the background. But where we are right now is still 300 metres or so away from where this incident took place, a barrier in place and the police on site as well, because of the horrific and traumatic nature of what they are describing, Merseyside police, as a tragic incident.
Will Hollis on the ground in Southport, thanks very much. My thoughts are with those children, the families and everyone involved tonight. It's such a cliche, but it is every parents' worst nightmare. Yeah, my prayers go out to them. Now, we move on. The Conservative Party has a massive task on its hands, deciding whether their priority should be tackling Labour or getting to grips with Reform UK. Not only do the Tories need to regroup, they need to rediscover their very essence, Conservative values. Many Tory members believe the only person prepared to face the reality of why they were annihilated at the election is Suella Braverman. And she's argued again today that failures on migration, taxes, home ownership and trans ideology cost them power in government. Well, it seems like Suella is now tired of hearing her pleas fall on deaf ears, because she also today officially dropped out of the Tory leadership race, slamming her colleagues for shoving their fingers in their ears when it comes to how they should regain power. So, what next for the former Home Secretary?
Suella Braverman is a good friend of mine. She ticks all my boxes, and probably all the boxes of Reform UK. You know, I would love to have her on board with the Reform UK party.
Reform UK MP Lee Anderson there, but Suella suggests she's not open to flirting with Reform and reckons actually she's content with supporting the Conservatives' new leader from the backbenchers, whether it's Tom Tugendhat, Mel Stride, James Cleverly, Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick or Priti Patel. Suella says she'll be there to support them. So look, she's loyal, no doubt, but when even she admits her party brands her mad, bad and dangerous, why on earth is she sticking around? A defection to join Nigel Farage on an all-star right-wing ticket would certainly give the Tories food for thought. But let's get the thoughts of my panel now. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, former Labour Minister Bill Rammell and former chairman of the Conservative Party, Sir Jake Berry. Carol Malone, let's start with you. An all-star right-wing ticket, Suella to Reform. Is it going to happen?
No, I don't think it's going to happen. Not in a million years. I mean, she actually said today in the piece she did in the Telegraph that Farage destroyed us. She's still calling herself an Tory. But she said...
I think, Carol, sorry to be a pain, your mic is off. We're going to sort it out. But
really?
Bill Rammell, don't burst my bubble and say Suella's not going to Reform. Is it happening?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure Reform is big enough for two outsized egos like hers and Nigel Farage, but we'll see. But what I think is really interesting is I get no sense from Suella.
Bill, it's a brace. Your mic is off as well. In true fashion. Jake, give us a few words.
Well, I checked. I hope my mic.
Got you. You go.
So, I don't think she will go for Reform. Clearly, Suella has some support in the party. She claims that 12 people, that's 10%, including herself, of Conservative MPs were prepared to sign her nomination forms. There's absolutely room for someone like Suella Braverman, who wants to hold a mirror up to the party, to say, we have to look at why we've done badly, we've got to look at why we get to how we get to grips with immigration. She is welcome in the Conservative Party. She's the sort of voice that we should have in the party and should be listening to if we want to go back to power. I suspect she won't go to Reform. It's very attractive for Reform because if they get one more Member of Parliament, if they go from 5 to 6, they get over £1 million of additional taxpayer funding for the short money. So clearly they want number 6. 6 for them is a charm. It's about 1.5 million they get additional funding. So they will be making overtures to Suella and every other MP in Parliament.
Who does the funding come from?
It's funded by the taxpayer. It's what we call short money. It's money made available from the taxpayer to fund opposition parties to hold the government to account. It's completely normal.
Not only would it be a coup of sorts, it would be very, very lucrative for Nigel.
Big payday.
Carol Malone, let's test your mic. Are you with us?
Are we with you? I don't know. Mine looks like it's on.
Are we good? We're all good.
We're all good.
Off you go.
I just think there's... I was surprised when she said she wasn't going to run, because there was a poll done a couple of weeks ago which said she was more popular among party members than Kemi Badenoch was. But she said today that she said there's no point in running because most Tory MPs disagree with her diagnosis of what went wrong and her prescription of what it would take to put it right, which is an interesting thing, I think, because what she's kind of suggesting is the Tories have still not come to grips with why they were...
Well, they haven't, have they?
Well, the alternative is she might actually be wrong.
But I don't know if that's crossed her mind.
I'm going to bring Bill in just a second, but Jake, why do you think you lost the election? And where do you regain power? From the centre ground? Is that your take?
Well, what I have to accept is we lost 60 seats to the Liberal Democrats and 5 to Reform UK. So any electoral strategy of the Conservative Party, and I was chairman of the party, that only seeks to rebuild the Reform vote, only seeks to rebuild the Reform vote,
split the votes in lots and lots of seats, not least down in my seat.
I understand we've got to get the votes back.
Bill Remmel.
It did, but the only place you can win elections under our electoral system is the centre ground of British politics. And, you know, people like Suella saying the reason the Tories lost was that they weren't right-wing enough. The vast majority of people, they were seen as too right-wing and too
Bill
extreme.
Remmel, sorry, Cal, let me just address Bill's comment there. The highest tax burden in decades, uncontrolled mass migration. On what planet were the Tories
While Suella was in the cabinet.
While she was in the cabinet. But, you know, the massive assault on public services, benefiting the wealthy at the expense of the less well-off, that was a very right-wing agenda.
I'm going to bring Carol in, so I rudely cut you off.
She says, I think she's right in this. She said the Tories didn't want to hear the truths that she had to tell. Truths that you mentioned some of them before, you know, the trans ideology, that multiculturalism doesn't work, about the EHCR, about the fact that cops had to be tougher on the Palestinian mobs. The Tories didn't want to hear all that. And she says now all they want to talk about is unity because it's fashionable. But they're not actually doing anything about why they were chucked out. And I think she... But the thing about Suella, I think, is interesting that a lot of what she says, a lot of people agree with, especially people who watch this station, they would agree with her. But she always says something that cocks it up at the last
minute. We've got 10 seconds. Final word to you.
When you lose this heavily, you need real soul-searching about why you lost. I get no sense that anyone in the Tory party is getting to grips with that. And, you know... Even Tom Tugendhat, who I think is probably their best bet, he's pitching to leave the ECHR, which most people in this country oppose.
I think
that's not true.
And why?
That is just not true.
Look at the polling evidence,
I think most Tory members watching from home tonight are probably cheering and throwing their fists in the air.
But there's your problem. You're selecting your leader through the Tory party membership.
That's how it should be.
No. Leave it to the MPs. Okay. The Tory membership is more right-wing, more extreme and much older than the general electorate.
OK, Carol, Bill, Jake, thanks very much. Good start. Coming up, I'll bring you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Plus, a swimming commentator has been accused of sexism and cancelled for this comment.
Well, the women just finishing off. You know what women are like, hanging around, you know, doing the makeup.
It is a bit silly, isn't it? Carol Malone giggling to my side. It is a bit silly, but does he deserve the sack? We'll discuss it shortly. Next, a controversial Muslim cleric, this is also hilarious, has raised £3 million to buy a remote Scottish island with plans to turn it into an Islamic homeland. I kid you not. Next, I'll be speaking to a local councillor in the area who's outraged by the proposal. This is Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
An employment tribunal has found that a senior lawyer telling a legal secretary that she looked nice created an intimidating environment and made her feel violated.
Well, she's won her sexual harassment suit, so is saying someone looks nice acceptable in the workplace anymore?
Well, joining us now to debate this is political commentator Christine Hamilton, who thinks it should be, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid, who thinks making comments like these are unnecessary. OK, Rebecca, why is it unnecessary to tell your colleague they look nice?
Well, how somebody looks at work shouldn't be particularly important or relevant, but I think my issue here is that it's used as a sort of dismissive way to make women feel silly for complaining about things. Like, oh, it's just saying you look nice, why does it matter? But we all know there are different ways of saying things, and if you are an older man in a position of power, looking a woman up and down and saying, oh, you look nice, in a lascivious tone, which, as far as we know, is quite possibly what happened, that's not acceptable, that's not workplace appropriate, and it would make somebody feel uncomfortable.
Christine, she's right, Rebecca, isn't she? It depends how it's said. If you've got someone who's sleazy saying, oh, you look nice, you're going to be a bit off-put, aren't you?
Yes, we don't know whether this was said in a lascivious tone or not. And as far as I can see, this particular case, the boss went too far and he did a lot of other things as well. But what worries me is that the Tribunal has ruled that just saying you look nice could be included as sexual harassment. Now, I think that is ridiculous.
Realistically, women don't make these accusations for fun. Women don't make these accusations to be difficult. They do it because they've been made to feel unsafe or unable to work in a certain place.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. This is Patrick Christys. Tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. All of tomorrow's newspaper front pages coming in just a tick. But first, the owner of a remote Scottish island has been forced to intervene after the controversial Muslim cleric Sheikh Yasser al-Habib announced plans to buy the uninhabited island of Torsa, which is just off the Weend. And he's going to turn it into his own Islamic state. The Kuwaiti activist wants to practice Sharia law on the island and build a school and a hospital and a mosque. His appeals to his followers have already raised more than £3 million towards the cost of buying the land. Al-Habib was jailed in Kuwait in 2003 for inciting sectarianism and was granted asylum, of course he was, in the UK shortly after his release. He is the founder of the Mahdi Servants Union, which runs military-style training camps, and the Fadak Shia Islam TV channel from a private compound in the village of Fulmer, South Buckinghamshire. So the island only has one home on it, a farmhouse available for holiday lets, and hasn't been permanently inhabited since the 1970s. And here is one of Al-Habib's followers setting out their plans.
Here, my brothers, God willing, we want to build the largest mosque, the school, the hawza. We want this place to be a homeland to the Shiites and the believers in a wide land.
It's on sale for over £1.5 million, but after a backlash from locals, the owner has reportedly stepped in and blocked Al-Habib's offer. I'm joined now by the Independent Councillor for Kintyre and the Islands, Alistair Redman. Good evening, Alistair. Thanks for joining us. Look, I'm laughing all the way through this, and I've been laughing all day when I read the story because it just seems so utterly bizarre. But this is happening, isn't it? Or at least he's trying to make it happen.
Yes, thankfully it's not going to take place. The owner has rightfully put a stop to this and made the correct decision. But when I first saw this article and my constituents and people further afield made me aware of it, I thought it was satirical. I didn't think it was real. It is absolutely incredulous that this would even be allowed to extend to this state. And it is very worrying that a man with these views, who apparently is too controversial for Kuwait, is allowed in this country to preach his hateful message. And the notion of him purchasing land and developing it to spread his ideology is very concerning indeed. And thankfully it's been put to a stop. But we want none of that here in rural Scotland. You'll find a very welcoming, inclusive, and friendly people. And the idea of religious sectarianism being brought to rural Scottish islands, I don't want any part of that.
Well, you ask what this guy was doing here and given asylum by the UK government when he was kicked out of Kuwait for being too extreme. I mean, that is modern-day Britain. That's it. We're kind of used to that kind of thing. So was this ever going through? Was the owner of the land considering that £1.5 million offer, or up to £3 million, as he later raised?
Well, I suspect, and I don't speak for the owner of the land, but he would have sold perhaps to the highest bidder, and you can understand that. And he probably had no idea of this person's plans. And if you look at the logistics of it, I'm not sure it would have been possible anyway. But for it to advance to this stage is very concerning indeed. And I have had messages all day from people outside of my constituency, within my constituency, from all over the world, very concerned about this. There's a petition online that's gained thousands of signatures opposed to this going forward. And again, I think there's questions here for the UK government.
Give me a description of the islands, the geography up there. Are there many small islands like this? He's been obviously denied on this occasion, but could he turn his attentions elsewhere?
There are many uninhabited islands. Some of them are community-owned. Some of them are owned by individual landowners, numerous crofts, numerous farms, so on and so forth. So it would perhaps be very difficult. But it's not just the purchasing of the island. It's the infrastructure of getting there, getting people there, building anything there. I actually think he hadn't thought through this plan, and it was something of a fantasy idea. I think his ambitions and his ability are not matched, thankfully.
Well, he raised £3 million. Doesn't sound like he was just having, a bit of fun and playing around.
Absolutely. And I'm very, very grateful you've highlighted that, because how was he allowed to raise this much money? Again, there are restrictions in place for certain people when it comes to access to banking. Certain people are monitored by the government. Why this individual was able to raise £3 million for this insane sectarian idea is beyond me. This has no place in rural Scotland, no place in rural Argyll, no place anywhere in the United Kingdom. And if this person has too strong views for Kuwait, if this person is considered too hateful for a Middle Eastern country, then he should be too hateful for this country.
Yep, indeed. But unfortunately, these types of people get that free housing, they get access to NHS, they get free dental care and so on and so on. For some reason, seem to welcome them with open arms. It happened to the guy who was Hamas's terror chief on the West Bank. He now lives in North London, in Barnet. He bought his council house about 10 years ago. So there we go. Modern-day Great Britain. Listen, thank you so much, Alistair, for joining us. Appreciate it. And I'm glad to know that his bid has been foiled.
Thank you very much.
Right, a Home Office spokesperson said extremism has no place in our society. We work closely with law enforcement, local communities and our international partners to tackle groups and individuals who sow division and hatred. Coming up, a commentator at the Olympics has been accused of sexism and cancelled for this comment.
Well, the women just finishing off. You know what women are like, hanging around, doing the makeup.
So just how bad is that remark? Do you think it's over the top and sexist, or you think he's just having a bit of fun? I'll get the views of my panel next. But coming up, get ready for the liveliest paper review you won't get anywhere else on television. The first front pages have just been delivered. Stay tuned. This is Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News.
Good evening. Coming to you from the Met Office, here is your latest GB News weather forecast. Whilst tomorrow is looking largely sunny and hotter than today for many of us, we do have a bit of cloud and some rain still across parts of the northwest due to a weak decaying front that is gradually making its way southeastwards. That rain then is going to push its way a little bit further across parts of Scotland and perhaps Northern Ireland before easing and clearing away overnight, and so for many it is going to turn largely dry. There will be some clear skies around, but also a few pockets of mist and fog here and there. In the southeast, I'm expecting it to be a bit warmer than last night, but towards the northwest, it should be a touch fresher, perhaps a little bit more comfortable. If we take a closer look at what we can expect first thing tomorrow morning, then down the eastern side of Scotland, a bright sunny start here. Further west, though, a bit cloudier, and there could still be some lingering showery outbreaks of rain around, though these will largely clear away as we go through the morning. Also, a few spots of rain perhaps for the far west of Northern Ireland, and a bit more cloud over far north of England. But for many central southern parts of England and Wales, it is going to be a bright sunny start. And because of the sunshine, any fog and mist patches will quickly clear away. Lots of sunshine then for many of us as we go through tomorrow. Even across Scotland and Northern Ireland, it is going to be brighter and sunnier than today, and like I said, those showery outbreaks of rain will clear through as well. With the sunshine, it's going to feel pretty hot, particularly in the southeast, temperatures getting to highs of around 32 Celsius, which will make it the hottest day of the year so far. A little bit fresher towards the northwest. Looking ahead to Wednesday, and it's another fine day for many of us. We still have some very hot, humid air across us, especially in the southeast, and that does mean there is the risk of some thunderstorms pushing up from the south as we go through Wednesday night and into Thursday. So do watch out for some intense thunderstorms on Thursday, particularly in the south, and then some wetter, fresher weather on Friday.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. The first of tomorrow's newspapers have just dropped hot off the press. Let's start with the Metro. TV Hugh kid porn charge. BBC star Hugh Edwards shared over 37 indecent images. He will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Wednesday. The Eye, deadly knife attack at children's dance class. Of course, that terrible story from Southport today, which really, if I'm being honest, has rocked the nation. The Sun, 2 children killed at holiday club, 6 children critical. 17-year-old teenager is held, and a bit on the side there, Hugh's 37 indecent images charges. The Guardian, 2 children dead and 9 injured in ferocious attack at dance class. Rachel Reeves at the bottom, she acts to plug £22 billion black hole, quote, covered up, unquote, by the Tories. And the Daily Mail, 2 children dead in holiday club carnage. And a bit on the Olympics at the bottom. Was this the greatest comeback in Olympic history? Team GB mountain biker Tom Piddock celebrates gold in Paris today. So, there we go. I'm joined now by my Press Pack Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, former Labour Minister Bill Rammell, and the former chairman of the Conservative Party, Sir Jake Berry. Right, now, organisers of the woke opening ceremony at the Paris Olympics have been made to eat humble pie. The showpiece drew many criticisms, among them this banquet scene with a table of drag queens which looked to resemble Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper painting. And some religious groups now have condemned the ceremony, including the Catholic Church in France, who said it included, quote, scenes of derision and mockery of Christianity. And in a press conference yesterday, Paris 2024 organiser Anne Deschamps said this.
And clearly there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. On the contrary, I think that Thomas Joly really tried to really intend to celebrate community tolerance. If people have taken any offence, we are of course really sorry.
Oh, that's OK. You're sorry. It's fine. All's forgiven. Carol, I haven't watched a moment of the Olympics because I was so disgusted with what I saw. I saw degeneracy, debauchery. What were your thoughts on it? Is sorry good enough?
What? No. Why would anyone think it's a good idea to disparage Christ at the Olympic opening ceremony? It is just beyond belief to me that they would think this. I mean, I noticed they haven't disparaged other religions. They haven't made a parody of anything to do with Islam or the Prophet.
Well, they wouldn't dare.
They wouldn't dare. But, you know, why would France want to be seen on the world stage in this way? Why choose to mock Christ and mock Christianity in this way? And what have drag queens got to do with sport? There's no Olympic sport for being a drag queen. Why were they even involved?
Not yet.
Well, not yet, but I mean, thank God not yet. But I mean, why were they even there? It was a kind of it was like an homage to woke. You know, and I know a lot. I've been listening all day to the radio and I've been listening to parents saying, you know, I have kids who are 6, 7, 8 years old. We couldn't watch it. It's supposed to be family entertainment, and yet people were turning the telly off because of these disturbing images of Satanism, you know, of the drag queens, of trans stuff. It's crazy.
Very satanic, very satanic. Bill Rammell, I think it's an insult to the athletes in Paris who are there, they're prime human beings at the peak of their performance, and their big event, the thing they've been training hard towards for years, is ruined by this absolute clown show of a circus debauchery opening ceremony.
Well, I have to admit to having fallen asleep during the opening ceremony. That might have been the amount of red wine I drank, as opposed to the ceremony.
Hope it was a good one.
But I think it's important we're careful. Religion should not be beyond parody. But if this was parody, I'm not sure what point they were trying to make. And, you know, all Olympic opening ceremonies try to extol the virtues of the host nation. You know, this is a country where the majority of people are Catholic. So parodying the church in that way, I think at the very least the organisers have got some very serious questions to answer.
Jake Berry, there's conjecture online, and sorry to make this a very deep conversation, but there's some conjecture online that this is akin to some sort of spiritual war, some attack on Christianity. Do you think there was any intention?
Well, I don't know, but I can tell you, as a Christian, I am absolutely fed up of my faith and the faith of many of your GB News viewers as being absolutely fair game for people to have a go at. It would not happen with Islam. It would not happen with Jainism, Hinduism, Judaism. You know, but the idea that as an opening ceremony, as a centrepiece of it, you can parody Christianity, which in my view is a huge force for good. There's problems with it, yes, it's a huge force for good. It's completely unacceptable. And you would think France would know better, because they, of course, had the appalling attacks at the Charlie Hebdo magazine after they parodied a picture of the Prophet Muhammad. And so, as a nation, they've got a bit of form on this. That was an appalling tragedy. They certainly wouldn't do it again in their opening ceremony. But apparently it's fine to parody Christianity. You say, Bill, no religion should be beyond parody. OK.
Well, there is.
But all of them should be there, not just Christianity.
Absolutely. Look, and you need to be even-handed here. I mean, you know, I was horrified and stood up for Charlie Hebdo and their right to parody a religion. That right is important and you shouldn't remove it. But the question is judgment. And, you know, what message were they trying to send? And to this day, I really don't understand what they were trying to communicate.
They sullied this ancient competition with Christ bashing. I mean, why would you... You know, it looked to me like a bunch of silly performance artistes thinking, how can we pay off the...
It was probably funded by the EU, though.
Carol, did you see...
we pay off the normies? Oh, OK, let's mock Christ. That'll shock them. That'll get them on the high.
Do you know what, Jake? Because people like you, Christians, aren't going to do anything about it. We know what would happen if it was Islam or Muhammad, but you're not going to do anything about it.
I'm not. I mean, do you know what? I am involved in my own bike in the Olympics. I just watch what I'm interested in.
I haven't watched... It's a shame because I love sport, but I've not watched a second of it.
Because this is all detracted from the Olympics and what it's all about.
And actually, Britain's doing quite well. I mean, last time I checked, it was 7th in the medal table.
Yeah,
so we should be celebrating that, not having this appalling discussion about, you know, a bad decision made by the organisers.
One element of the opening ceremony, which I was awake for, Celine Dion's performance was absolutely magnificent.
Yeah, I'm glad she's back on the stage. Right, something else that's caught the attention at the Olympics. A veteran swimming commentator has been suddenly given the boot over an on-air remark deemed to be a bit sexist. So Bob Ballard was commentating for Eurosport at the weekend when he made this comment about Australia's female swimmers who had won gold in the 4x100 metre freestyle relay. Take a listen.
Well, the women just finishing off. You know what women are like, hanging around, you know, doing the makeup.
Outrageous, Bob. Some of the men are doing that as well.
They're doing the makeup. Yeah. All right.
Oh, dear, Bob. What are you up to, you silly old fool? Carol?
Well, he was being a silly old fool, but I don't think he should have been fired for it. I don't think he should have been taken off air. You know what it's like being a TV presenter. You've got a bit of time to fill in, you didn't know you had, you don't quite know what to say. Happens to you a lot, I know. And you don't know what to say, and you just say something daft, and you think, oh, my God, what was I thinking? Yes, it was daft, yes, it was silly, but, you know, we've got to stop being offended by everything.
Phil?
We really do.
Well, given it was on Eurosport, I'm not sure how many people were listening or watching. However, you know, I don't know about bad, but it was cringeworthy. And I think on reflection, he will regret that he made the comments, because many people, both men and women, will have found them offensive.
It's not offensive.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that I think it wasn't a bad attempt at a joke.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he should have lost his job over this. It's the sort of thing that could be addressed through training. What I'd really like to know is, has anyone gone and asked those 4 brilliant Australian athletes whether they were bothered?
Oh, of course
because I'm sure they couldn't care less. This is public outrage on the internet again. I'm outraged on behalf of the swimmer who I've never spoken to. I'm sure no one's bothered asking them.
Exactly.
They probably thought it was quite funny themselves and probably want to see him let off.
You're quite right. Look, it was, it was a silly comment, wasn't it? But should he be cancelled for it? No. Well, look, the clip went viral on social media, as you said, Jake, and Eurosport acted swiftly, issuing this statement. They said, during a segment of Eurosport's coverage last night, commentator Bob Ballard made an inappropriate comment. To that end, he's been removed from our commentary roster with immediate effect. And Ballard himself has now spoken out publicly, actually, saying, the comments I made have caused some offence. It was never my intention to upset or belittle anyone, and if I did, I apologise. I'm a massive advocate of women's sport. I'll miss the Eurosport team dearly and wish them all the best for the rest of the Olympics. It is actually very harsh, isn't it? That,
it's interesting. All his colleagues piled onto Twitter today and said what a fantastic guy he was and what a really nice bloke, and that he wasn't disparaging of women in day-to-day. If he wasn't, it was just something daft that he said. We all make mistakes, we're just not all on telly.
And it's also a bit of a generational mistake. You know, he's of an age where maybe that was seen as acceptable. But I think, and, you know, his statement demonstrates it, I think he realises he screwed up.
And, Jake, why can't we just make mistakes these days and just apologise and that be it? Why do people have to get
Because we have, you know, it's mob rule. And the mob in this case is on Twitter. Look, he genuinely made a mistake. He should have been asked to go and apologise to those 4 brilliant gold medal winning athletes. If they'd have accepted his apology, as far as I'm concerned, that should have been the end of it. But of course, Eurosport, whichever the channel was, cannot ignore the faux outrage of the mob rule on X or Twitter or whatever it's called. And actually, it makes Britain and the world a less nice place to live.
Yeah, I mean, these people, the left especially, they preach so-called tolerance, but they're very intolerant of anything that doesn't align with them.
You know it's confected outrage. You know it's kind of made-up outrage. There's always going to be somebody who's got something to complain about.
I've got a theory that I say it all the time on this channel, I've got a theory that maybe 5-10 years, all the sort of the corporate wokerati the tide will turn and they'll come to realise that most right-thinking, common-sense people actually aren't offended by all this nonsense.
Well, we all make mistakes. We just not everyone who makes them is in a public arena where people hear them. We make mistakes every day.
I say this, I'm a passionate supporter of free speech and open debate, and the best way that you challenge and expose views you disagree with is by debating.
Exactly.
Take them on. Speak to the owners of Bud Light. Go woke, go broke.
Exactly. Right, Carol, Bill, Jake, thanks very much. We'll come back in just a tick. But coming up, an independent Muslim MP told voters days before the election, follow the teachings of the Prophet and vote for him. Is this behaviour a serious threat to democracy in the UK? Carol Malone tutting to my left-hand side again. My panel discussed that in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass shortly. But next, there's more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages on the way. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Most people will be familiar with French artists such as Auguste Renoir, Claude Monet and Camille Pissarro, who with others made up the Impressionist movement of the late 19th century. But we are probably less familiar with the British contingent of the Impressionists, artists like Frank Bramley, Elizabeth Armstrong Forbes and Walter Langley, amongst many others. David Messam is on a mission to change that. I'm joined by David Messam and by Patrick Duffy, an esteemed archivist. These people we're talking about, are they really Impressionists? I mean, I assume they're British, but are they Impressionists?
I think we had the same query when we wrote a book about the whole thing in '85, actually. And we were the book nearly went out as a Garden of Bright Images, actually, though my author then, Laura Wortley, was quite insistent that it should be called Garden of Bright Images, but I thought probably we'd put it in the gardening section, actually. So, you know, the question you ask is what is on other people's minds, too, actually. Have we got Impressionism in this country? I think for me, as I used to do quite a lot of shopping, if you like, in America, looking for English pictures out there, and they've got American Impressionism, and I'm quite happy with it, but the English are different.
Were they friends and colleagues? Were they collaborators with the French Impressionists?
Broadly speaking, British Impressionism is, as we term it, is the post-Impressionist movement. So they were certainly inspired by the French Impressionist movement as it was, but they came later. They travelled around Europe and became attuned to on plein air painting, so painting outdoors, and that's what they brought over with them. We call it British realism, but there's a focus.
British realism, I kind of recognise.
Yes,
I mean that's exactly what that
exactly.
looks like.
The People's Channel.
Patrick, Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. More of the front pages have just dropped, including, starting with the Daily Telegraph. Knifeman kills 2 children in holiday club horror. Tom Daley and Noah Williams there pictured winning silver for Team GB. It was today in the synchronised 10-metre platform diving. Well done to you both. And at the bottom, Rachel Reeves cuts off winter fuel benefit for millions of pensioners. 10 million pensioners being affected by their scrap on the payment. The Times, we move on to, knife attack on children was like a horror movie. And Rachel Reeves, again, tax rise hints as Chancellor cuts winter fuel payment. The Independent, pensioners hit by Reeves plan to fill a £22 billion black hole, which they knew nothing of. They had no idea. They turned up to government, despite the OBR being there, and they said, oh, my goodness me, what a mess. The Daily Express, like a scene from a horror movie. 2 adults critical after bravely trying to save children. And the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says the whole country is deeply shocked by the stabbing attack in Southport. Should we talk quickly about Rachel Reeves? She's turned her sights on pensioners by scrapping winter fuel payments for 10 million.
This is a joke. This is the socialist government, and it's taken this payment away from pensioners. You know, last winter it was vital when fuel prices were rocketing. It was really important, and to take that away, to me, and she's also going to go after their pensions as well. We keep hearing that in October she's going to go for people's pensions start, and there'll be some pensioners paying tax for the first time in their pensionable lives, which just seems mental to me. You know, and she's got to stop peddling this 22 billion black hole nonsense. It's been discredited by almost every financial analyst in this country.
Bill Remmel's shaking his head, but Bill, I'm not sure if you saw at the top of the show, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, gave an interview to the Financial Times 3 weeks before the election, literally saying, verbatim, I can't just turn up to the Treasury and say there's a massive black hole and a big mess that I need to sort out with tax rises, because we've had the OBR, we've had the forecast, and you don't need an election to find that out.
Well, we have got a 22 billion black hole to such an extent that the Office for Budget Responsibility has now launched an investigation on the way that the March budget was put together
and the way information
was withheld. Well, tell me then, Carol, why they're launching an investigation.
Well, because they have to be seen to do that, because Rachel Reeves is peddling this nonsense in public all the time.
The government doesn't control the budget, Office for Budget Responsibility.
So no one knew about it but her. She's just discovered.
We have got difficult decisions to make, and I actually think the one group that has been protected over the last 14 years are the elderly.
And they should be. So they should be.
Well, hold on. There are many, many millions of pensioners who do not need the winter fuel allowance.
Right. Let me tell you
Jake,
what the destination is here.
Have your lot been
Rachel
cooking the
Reeves wants to put your taxes up. Rachel Reeves wants to bung big pay rises, 22% to the paymasters in the public sector. So that's where she's going. So let's talk about the journey. First of all, her allegation is that there's been a conspiracy between a Conservative Chancellor of the Exchequer and the civil service. Now, I've been a very senior minister, including in the Cabinet. I can tell you the last thing the civil service would ever do is try to help a Conservative minister. It is bonkers. Rachel Reeves is lying. She knew about this. She claims there's £22 billion. Well, 10 billion of that, probably over half, actually, is just the public sector pay rises that she's agreed to. So she's created over half of it. She is lying because she wants to take you to that destination. She wants an excuse.
So, you deny that your lot were cooking the books in government. Correct. I mean, it's a massive, it's a staggering claim from
I wish we could. Frankly, the idea that the civil service would conspire with the Conservative Party to mislead the OBR and the public, it's for the birds.
Let's see what the OBR investigation flushes out. But let's take one specific. The pay review recommendation for teachers sat on the Secretary of State's for Education's desk in advance of the election, and she and the government did nothing to properly fund it. They knew that was coming down the stream, and they didn't provide the money.
With respect, we're talking about what she's doing to pensioners. That's really important.
Yeah.
You talk about... I get really tired of politicians who talk about pensioners like they're this rich stream of people in this country. There are nearly 3 million of them have nothing but the state pension.
And they're being protected.
Which
and they will continue to get winter
So you're telling me
if you're just over that, it doesn't mean.
So you're telling me if you earn just over £1,000 a month for your pension, you might have worked hard your whole life. That's a basic state pension.
Get that.
Plus maybe a tiny work pension that you can afford the massive gas and electricity bills without some sort of government. But I tell you, and I hope GB News listeners, there is a big commodity price spike coming down the track. Bills will go up massively when we get to the winter, and the government has ripped away the only support that's available.
Beyond all others that has been protected are pensioners, and you've got difficult decisions to make, and I think this is a sensible move.
Difficult decisions like giving people a 22% pay rise when they earn 50 grand already.
We've already been told that she's going to go after their pension, she's going to make pensioners start paying tax, and she'll go after private pensions
as well. That's what the Tories were going to do.
No, well, they haven't.
Last one, we're going to move on to something else that's happened today. The High Court, they've ruled that the Tories' ban on puberty blockers is, in fact, legal. Campaign group Transactual and a young person who can't be named made a bid to challenge the decision of former Health Secretary Victoria Atkins, but it hasn't proved successful. And it's been reported that since taking power, Labour and Wes Streeting want to make the ban permanent. So, Carol, is the tide turning against the extreme trans ideology?
I really hope so, because, you know, people in the past 2 years who have criticised these puberty blockers have been destroyed, savaged, shamed in public. Just think about this. You know, you have a bunch of vulnerable kids who are being given experimental drugs. They're not proven to do any good, that can wreck their bodies forever. And the people who dare to ask questions about that are the people who are being shamed and cancelled.
Yep.
It's outrageous. The people who want to give these experimental drugs, when the science does not back up what they're supposed to do.
Bill Remmell, Wes Streeting is losing the left of his party, isn't he, with this
He's
stance?
doing the right thing, and I think the gender-critical activists have been vindicated by this High Court decision. Go back to the Cass review. What that review demonstrated was there was no evidence that these puberty blockers didn't carry significant risk. And I think it's absolutely right. And you know, frankly, teenagers, children should not be taking puberty blockers.
Jake Berry, at least the Tories got that right.
Victoria Atkins was right to do the temporary ban. The Labour Party and Wes Streeting are absolutely right to set that this will be in legislation. Let's let children be children and experience puberty normally in this country. I think it's the right thing to do. I'm really pleased that Labour's taking it forward.
These drugs can have very serious effects on the body, long-term effects, reproductive system, the body, the brain, bones, everything. And we don't know the full extent of the damage they can do yet.
OK, time now for tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Carol Malone, let's start with you. Your Greatest Britain, please.
Mine's a weird little one, OK? Mine is Irene Reid. She's Britain's longest-serving lollipop lady. Oh. She's 84 years old. She's been seeing kids across the road outside Longwood School in Lancashire for 55 years. She's now seeing grandparents across the road who she saw across as kids, and they're bringing their own kids. Now, I have a very soft spot for all lollipop. My mum was one, loved it, kids adored her. So this is a shout-out for my mum as well.
Yes. What's your mum's name?
Reid. Pat. She's not alive now, so don't shout her out. It's a long shout to heaven.
I was about to say hello, Pat.
No, she will
God bless her memory.
Pat. She can hear you.
Bill Remmell, your GB, please.
The Brit Scarlett Mew Jensen, who won a bronze in the synchronised swimming on Saturday, our first medal in the Olympics. And this is a woman who won that medal just 3 months after fracturing her back.
Wow.
Her courage, resilience, determination to succeed, I think is an inspiration to us.
Love it. Great nomination. Jake Berry.
So, Tom Pidcock managed to come back and successfully defend his mountain bike. I think it was a gold medal he successfully defended. Halfway round the course, he had a puncture and he lost 40 seconds. But he abided by that great saying of Winston Churchill, never give up, never give up, never give up. Made all the time, overtook the French. He represents the best of the Olympic spirit, and the French people who booed him as he crossed the finishing line represent the worst of the British.
No surprise to hear the French surrendered. Look, 2 great nominations there with the Olympics, but I'm going to have to give it to Irene Reid. Carol, lollipop ladies, I love them.
Can I also give out a Greatest Britain? A big shout out to all the emergency services in Southport today, who were there within minutes of this horror happening.
Quite right. I think that, you know, our police emergency services get a lot of stick in recent years for all sorts of things, but they're the first people we call when terror comes. I think back to London Bridge in 2017, I was involved in the terror attack there. I've never been so happy to see policemen turn up with guns in their shoulders. So, yeah, definitely respect to them. Union Jackass, Carol Malone.
Right, there's a lot of them for me now. It's all those junior doctors who are slating this 22% pay rise as derisory, and all those GPs who are now threatening to go on strike and paralyse the National Health Service. I cannot believe that people who took the Hippocratic Oath, people whose job it is to save lives, can willingly paralyse a health service to get more in their already humongous pay package.
Yeah, but Carol, they're stressed.
Can I just tell you
They're
that
stressed and overworked.
here's a startling fact that people might not know. If you're a partner GP in England, in this country, which most of the GPs are in their practices, their partners, their average salary is 153 grand.
All right,
most of them work a 3-day week. They don't work weekends and they don't work evenings.
That GP you had on tonight, that doctor you had on tonight, said she was burnt out from striking.
Yeah,
I think that is the quote of the entire.
Right, we've got to be quick. Bill Rammell, your UJ.
The newly elected independent MP for Dewsbury and Batley, Iqbal Mohammed, he sought to weaponise religion, asked worshippers at a mosque to follow the teachings of the Prophet and to vote for him. Using religion in politics is deplorable.
Yeah. Ridiculous. Jake?
Rachel Reeves, she's lying to you. She's stealing your winter fuel allowance. It's a 3-tumbler trick that she's playing on you. Do not fall for it.
OK, and right, some great nominees there. My UJ winner tonight is, drumroll please, Rachel Reeves MP.
Hey.
Giving that interview in the Financial Times weeks before the election. I've said it already tonight, I've said it on Friday night. We can't just turn up to government and say there's a big mess, because we've seen the OPR, we've seen the figures, there's no excuse. Rachel did exactly that. You turn up to the Treasury and you said, oh no, there's £20 billion missing, what are we going to do? We're going to hike capital gains tax, we're going to rip the aspiration from the very soul of the country. So Rachel Reeves is tonight's Union Jackass. Right, that's all from me. I'm back Friday night. Mark Dolan is here tomorrow. Headliners is next, but first, here's your weather with Alex Deakin. Good night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Coming to you from the Met Office, here is your latest GB News weather forecast. Whilst tomorrow is looking largely sunny and hotter than today for many of us, we do have a bit of cloud and some rain still across parts of the northwest due to a weak, decaying front that is gradually making its way southeastwards. That rain then is going to push its way a little bit further across parts of Scotland and perhaps Northern Ireland before easing and clearing away overnight, and so for many it is going to turn largely dry. There will be some clear skies around, but also a few pockets of mist and fog here and there. In the southeast, I'm expecting it to be a bit warmer than last night, but towards the northwest, it should be a touch fresher, perhaps a little bit more comfortable. If we take a closer look at what we can expect first thing tomorrow morning, then down the eastern side of Scotland, a bright sunny start here. Further west, though, a bit cloudier, and there could still be some lingering showery outbreaks of rain around, though these will largely clear away as we go through the morning. Also a few spots of rain perhaps for the far west of Northern Ireland, and a bit more cloud over far north of England. But for many central southern parts of England and Wales, it is going to be a bright sunny start, and because of the sunshine, any fog and mist patches will quickly clear away. Lots of sunshine then for many of us as we go through tomorrow. Even across Scotland and Northern Ireland, it is going to be brighter and sunnier than today, and like I said, those showery outbreaks of rain will clear through as well. With the sunshine, it's going to feel pretty hot, particularly in the southeast, temperatures getting to highs of around 32 Celsius, which will make it the hottest day of the year so far, a little bit fresher towards the northwest. Looking ahead to Wednesday, and it's another fine day for many of us. We still have some very hot, humid air across us, especially in the southeast, and that does mean there is the risk of some thunderstorms pushing up from the south as we go through Wednesday.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on a chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Anton Dubek, and even I know that's a big name, has become the latest Strictly Come Dancing pro to come under some sort of fire amid the show's misconduct probe.